the maid was invited to her home by the adventurer. The adventurer expresses gratitude to the maid for her previous help and showcases her achievements to the maid. However, the maid felt that the adventurer's house was a bit strange. At this moment, the adventurer's husband suddenly said some strange things to the maid. According to his words, the maid discovered another secret of this house. While the maid was still in shock, the adventurer also began to reveal her true face. In order to track down Moan's whereabouts, and came to a house that seemed to have been inhabited by someone. However, she didn't expect that the person living in the house was Aluca, whom she had just met recently. Aluca was also a bit surprised by Anne's arrival. She invited Anne into her room and lit some candles to illuminate the entire living room. Aluca went to the kitchen to pour a cup of tea and handed it to Anne sitting on the sofa. "Master, your tea," and took her tea with both hands and said to her, "Thank you." At this moment, Aluca realized that the clothes on Anne's body were different from what she had seen before. "Master, are you wearing a maid outfit? It's really cute." And placed the teacup on her thigh in order to prevent Aluca from becoming suspicious, and explained to her, "I come out of the mansion in a hurry and don't have time to change clothes, so I have to make do with it for now. Speaking of which, why did you call me master from the moment I entered the door? I don't remember teaching you anything." And looked up at Aluca with a puzzled expression. She didn't know what she had done to deserve such a title. Aluca carried her hands behind her and gave Anne a cute smile. She explained to Anne, "Master, have you forgotten? Thanks to your words that enlightened me before, I had the courage to accept my true self. Thanks to Master's guidance, I confessed my feelings to Rod that evening. Oh, by the way, Master, do you want to take a look at him?" Take a look? And doesn't quite understand what Aluca means. Aluca continued to explain to her, "Yes, look at the fruits of my hard work." In order to thank Anne for her emotional help before, she wants Anne to see how much she has achieved in love during this period. Although Anne didn't know exactly what Aluca was referring to, she still agreed to Aluca's suggestion. "Okay." Aluca ran towards one of the rooms with cheerful steps and said to Anne in a happy tone, "Master, please wait a moment." And nodded and watched as Aluca left the living room. At the moment when Aluca returned to her room and placed the teacup in her hand on the table, she stood up and observed the surrounding environment. At this moment, she seemed to notice something different in the living room. She silently said in her heart, "It's not wrong." The residual smell in the air. The young master has been here before. No odor in the living room could escape Anne's nose. And stood silently in place, feeling the flowing air in the living room. She could smell the scent belonging to Moan that still remained here. At that moment, she also smelled some different smells. However, besides the scent of the young master, there is also bloody smell, and furrowed her brows slightly. How could such a large house possibly have a bloody smell for no reason? Something must have happened here. She felt that this house might not be as ordinary as she had imagined. At this moment, Aluca's cheerful voice caught Anne's attention. "Master, I'm sorry to have made you wait," and turned slightly and looked towards the direction where Aluca was located. This, and slightly widened her eyes, feeling a bit surprised. She couldn't believe what she was seeing in front of her. Aluca walked out of the room with her eyes closed, and an innocent smile on her face. She held the iron chain that tied Rod with her left hand, and pulled Rod out of the room. She seems very happy to be able to showcase her achievements to Anne. Her husband, Rod, sat on the ground like a dog. His eyes were hollow. He was still not wearing any clothes, and he wore a heavy iron collar around his neck. Aluca introduced Rod to Anne with a cheerful tone. "Master, this is my dearest husband. Come on, Rod." Hearing Aluca's command, Rod purred softly. Woof. Then, Aluca squatted down. She extended her palm to Rod and said to him, "Rod, your hands." Woof. Rod responded to Aluca while turning his head blankly and placing his hand on her palm. Aluca was very happy with Rod's quick response. She raised her hand and touched his head, praising him. "Good boy." Seeing the interaction between Aluca and Rod, and seemed a bit surprised. "Oh? Is there still this kind of gameplay between husband and wife? That's interesting." And placed her hand on her chin and looked at Aluca and Rod with a serious expression, lost in thought for a moment. She seemed to think it was a little game between Aluca and Rod that could promote the relationship between husband and wife. She believes that such interaction provides a reference for increasing the relationship between her and Moan. And walked up to Aluca with a serious expression and praised her approach. "Well done, Aluca." Aluca held the iron chain in one hand and gently scratched her head with the other hand. She felt a bit shy about Anne's praise. She giggled a few times and said to Anne, "You're too kind, master. I think if it were a master, you would have made your lover completely submit both physically and mentally. Compared to master, I am still far behind." Upon hearing Aluca's words, Anne let out a soft sigh. "No, you did it well." Aluca is now able to keep her husband by her side and teach him so well, which makes her feel a little envious. She explained her current situation to Aluca. "To be honest, it was my indulgence and negligence that allowed my young master, my lover, to escape from my control." When she heard Anne say the word young master, Aluca felt a bit familiar. She put her hand on her chin and fell into thought. She looked at Anne with a puzzled expression and asked her, "Young master? Master, your lover is Mr. Moan?" And was very surprised when she heard Aluca say this name. She slowly widened her eyes, unable to believe that Aluca knew about Moan. "You're right. Sure enough, young master has been to your place before, right?" And immediately took a step forward and anxiously asked Aluca about Moan's presence here. She urgently wants to know about Moan's whereabouts. For Anne's sudden approach, Aluca instinctively took a step back. She quickly nodded and answered Anne. Yes." And continued to ask with Aluca, "Where is he now?" Aluca didn't know what to say at once. Aluca couldn't explain everything to Anne immediately, so she took Anne to the room where Moan had lived on the second floor. The window of the room has been opened, and the gentle breeze outside gently blows the curtains, indicating that Moan is no longer in the room. The wooden wardrobe next to the sofa has turned into a pile of broken wooden blocks and scattered on the ground. Aluca slowly explained to Anne what she knew about Moan. This is it. In the afternoon, on my way home, I met Mr. Moan, who was in tattered clothes. So, I brought him back, cooked him a meal, and asked him to stay here temporarily. But not long ago, I heard a sound coming from the room. When I came out to check, Mr. Moan had already left without saying goodbye.